Today we have Jesse Houlding. He's our guest artist. Our gallery management class brought him to the Gallery of Art Design here at Metropolitan Community College. Welcome, Jesse. I appreciate you coming and
Thanks for
doing
having
an
me.
interview with me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Okay, could you tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you to Elkhorn, Nebraska or Omaha, Nebraska?
Well, a little bit of surprise to be invited by one of Jules' students to have a solo show here. I've been, I have my MFA in printmaking from San Francisco State and had been showing in the Bay Area. I was the print shop manager at the Kala Art Institute, which is a nonprofit printmaking facility in Berkeley, California. And I had a show of the truck drawings, which Jules' student Amanda saw online, and she tracked me down through their website and then sent me an email offering me the show, and I couldn't believe it was true and was happy that it was, and that's how I got here.
You were talking a little bit about the truck drawings or the truck prints.
The truck prints,
Can you tell
right.
me the background behind
Sure.
the truck prints?
So many years ago, this is I guess maybe 2003, I was riding with a friend in his car, and he had one of those golf ball sized crystal balls hanging from his rear view mirror. And as we drove, accelerated, cornered, the ball would change arc and change direction rapidly. And I thought, oh, it's pretty amazing that these forces are acting on us as we drive, but we don't really feel them and we're buckled up in our seats. But I wanted to capture that motion, that sense of movement that's invisible to us, essentially. So it took me many iterations. At first I was trying with various different mechanisms to capture that motion. I thought at first I could use a bowling ball maybe, but the bowling balls aren't actually heavy enough to make a mark on paper, or the mark itself is too wide. And a friend of mine suggested a shot put, so I went online and I bought a 16-pound shot put, and it worked perfectly. So initially I was using carbon paper as the way of making the mark. So it would be a sheet of paper and then a piece of carbon paper, and then I put the shot put on top of that in a rectangular frame in the bed of my truck. And it worked great. So as I drive, the shot put rolls around and it would transfer the carbon onto the paper. But I began to feel that it was not related to the actual shape of the truck bed. Like what would make this square relate to the actual truck itself? And I didn't feel like it was relating very well. So I cut a wooden template to be the exact same contour as of the walls of the bed of my truck, and then cut a sheet of countertop laminate, which is just the biggest piece of plastic I could find, and then cut that to that same shape. So it's sort of like that hourglass shape with the cutouts for the wheel wells. And then, so I ink the countertop laminate with red rubber-based ink, and then I put a sheet of paper on top of that, and the sheet of paper is also cut to be the size of that same contour. And then I put the 16-pound steel shot put on top of that, and I put a cover on it, because if you don't have a cover and the ball gets out, it's tragedy on the highway. And so then I just drive around and do my errands. And so the titles of my pieces are they're fairly banal. It's like, do I go to Home Depot and to the grocery store and, maybe to the beach, whatever. And the ball rolls around as I drive and creates this beautiful map of the forces that act on you as you're driving. So my goal is to make phenomena a material, or turn the invisible visible, something that we take for granted, a force, and a force that we take for granted or is ubiquitous, but we don't notice it, like gravity or magnetism or light. To think about those forces in a different way, is turn them into like a sculptural or a printmaking element.
Were you surprised by what you got?
Absolutely. The large truck drawings are really amazing. You can see, to me, they kind of remind me of the CERN particle accelerator drawings, where the images that come out of the particle accelerator, where you get this explosion. of particles and the collision of particles. So that it seems sort of random, but then there's patterns underneath it all. You can see the streaks of the ball. You can see where you make a hard turn, but then a lot of it's just back and forth. So they're very exciting. I did a series of maybe 4 or 5 identical road trips. So from home to my studio to whatever the route was, identical, but different times of the day and on different days, and then hung them all side by side. And it was amazing to see how different each one was from each other. So it's like how much traffic there is, how much stopping and starting you do. It really changes the pattern for each one. So.
With the reddish maroon color, did you do different colors, or where does that come from?
I tried different colors. I tried a blue. I tried several different colors. Black. For some reason, the red just appeals to me. 'Cause I don't have a red truck. I have a silver truck, but yeah, I like the way the red looks, basically. So,
good.
No deep insight there.
Okay. So they're all red then.
They're basically all red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Very interesting, because if you didn't hear the truck part of it, you would. I mean, once you hear truck, it's like you see it right there.
Right.
But then, when I first saw it, it's like, wow.
Why
is it
this
an eye
shape?
or is it
Yeah.
a?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about these, when you don't know the background, or at least I sort of hope that's interesting. The quality of the line is the same, so it can't be drawn by hand, right? Because anything that's drawn by hand, the line varies by the pressure, the distance of your arm. And so it's almost like mechanical looking in that regard, I think. And then the strange shape, you can't, once you say it, it's obvious. But until you say it, it's kind of curious. Okay. So I like that, that it can be, there's a moment of discovery for the viewer when the process becomes clear.
Good.
So.
You have another piece over here with, I think it's magnets or something?
Yep,
Can you
it's magnets, sure. So this piece is called the Ferris wheel, Ferrous. And it is, so it's a disc with magnets mounted on the surface of the disc, and then with a sheet of paper in front of that, and then an arm that contains iron filings that get picked up by the magnet during each revolution. So, and the motor is a 1 RPM motor, so it's it revolves once every minute, and so the friction between the iron and the paper and the magnet it draws a line it draws a field essentially onto the surface of the paper, and then the magnets interact with each other. So the lowest magnet feeds iron down to the other magnets in the circle, and that creates a sort of like brush-like stroke. So depending on the strength of the magnet and the distance between the magnets, you get a variety of different kinds of marks. And so the piece will run for the duration of the show. So anytime the gallery's open, the machine will be on, and it's sort of marking time. So kind of it's like a friction clock almost. That's the way I think of it. So the iron falls onto the surface, and there's a tray in the bottom that collects the iron. So you'll start to see an accumulation of iron in the bottom of the work, and so it's almost like an hourglass deconstructed maybe, where you can see the particles accrete over time, and so time is a essential part of the piece. It's a way of marking time in a simple way. And it reveals, again, it's making an invisible force. We're surrounded by magnetic fields, and we use magnets and technology, all this stuff, and it's fairly ubiquitous, but it's sort of invisible unless you have some metal on you and you catch it by accident. So I like that idea where you have this interplay between magnetism and gravity and friction, all working together or opposing each other in one piece.
That's very, very neat. I was looking at your website and I saw the beginning of it. So at each show, do you redo the paper or whatever the material you're using?
So it's either so I've been doing some with canvas and some with paper, and I have a nice video of this one starting up. which I'll put on my website when it's done, when I'm done editing it. And so yeah, there's this magical moment when it just first turns on and it draws the first arc, and then it slowly fills in, and then over the course of the show it gets darker and darker and darker. I had one show that went on for almost 3 months, and I had another piece that was drawing a single line, and it ended up tearing through it ended up wearing through the paper, which was really great. I mean, I had to come and fix the paper, but
Okay.
I just love the idea that the art, that the process itself could, would have that profound an effect on the surface of the paper.
Good. So is there the piece in the main area, is that one piece or a couple different pieces in there?
In the
main gallery
The main
area.
gallery. So there are 3 reflecting pools. I guess I think of them as individual pieces, but as a group. So the idea with that, since moving to Hawaii, I've been thinking a lot about light and water. Maybe obviously, I had been. Prior to moving to Hawaii, I'd been thinking about light as how to make light a sculptural element. So we don't think of photons, the sun's rays, incandescent light as having dimension, essentially. But when light is reflected on water, or when we perceive light in various ways, it can appear to have dimensionality to it. And so I had a piece in a show in San Francisco that was specifically trying to turn light into sort of a 3-dimensional element. When I moved to Hawaii, I was very compelled by the interplay between the surface of water and the sun reflecting on various surfaces. And so this piece, the reflection pools, is a way of really exploring that idea. So the reflection pools it's a theater light, a 4 foot by 6 foot pool with about 3 or 4 inches of water in it, and then a 5 by 8 screen. So the light shines onto the surface of the pool, which is agitated by a fish pump. It just creates a ripple on the surface, and then that ripple is reflected onto the surface of the screen, which is just a sheet of white opaque paper. And so it's a sort of very simple idea, and I think to me I don't know, I find it very mesmerizing. It's almost like watching a fire, or something that's just you could kind of stare at endlessly. It's kind of meditative, and the sound of the water is also really lends a nice element, I think. So that room is darkened, and then the reflecting light is the only source of light other than the ambient light.
And I think you'll be able to hear some of that
in our background,
the noise or
right.
from the pool. It is kind of relaxing.
It is. It's great.
You get all the students out of here, and
Yeah.
you didn't hear that. It's like you fall asleep.
Sure. Yeah, it's very. I intended this room to be very meditative, and I just find myself, when I'm in Hawaii, when I'm surfing or on my stand-up paddleboard, just watching this interplay of light and water, and it's endlessly fascinating to me.
Good. Let's go back to, you're from the East Coast. Did you do your undergrad there? Tell me where you're from and where you started.
Sure. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, and then I went to college at Carleton in Northfield, Minnesota, Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, which is a small liberal arts school. I was a studio art major there. And then, I graduated maybe in 92. I think I would know this, but anyway, somewhere in there, 92,
Okay.
91, 92. Then I applied to grad schools about 10 years later in San Francisco, and ended up going to the San Francisco State MFA program, which is a 3-year program, and so I had my master's in printmaking from there. That program was great because you could enter in a department like printmaking, but there wasn't a huge expectation that you would make prints. So I started off making prints, and then quickly got interested in sort of more process-based work. Started playing around with iron filings and magnets, and then sort of took off from there into this exploration of the phenomena. And then since then, I worked at Kala'a Art Institute. Like I said, I was a print shop manager there for a couple of years, and then we moved to Hawaii. where I most recently showed this work in the Honolulu Museum as a Artists of Hawaii biennial. So I was really lucky to be included in that last year, and now this show.
So what was the draw to Hawaii, going from California to Hawaii?
So my sister-in-law moved there about 3.5 years ago for a job, and my wife and I went and visited them, and I just fell in love with Kona, and I said, we're moving here. My wife was a little dubious at first. She has a really good law career. I said, we're moving here. And she agreed, and we don't regret it at all. It's great. I felt at home sort of immediately there. And I mean, I love California. I have a lot of great friends there. We lived there for, 18 years. Okay. But just Hawaii is for me, basically. So surf every morning, dolphins, whales, mellow, no one's in a rush. It's like perfect lifestyle.
So did you surf before you went there? Or?
Yeah, I'd been surfing for a couple years in California. So yeah, it was much, much warmer in Hawaii than Northern California. It's great surfing in Northern California, but it is freezing. So.
Good. What are your influences?
Sure. I mean, I think my biggest influence is Robert Irwin. He does a lot of his work is really about perception and light, especially. And James Turrell is another artist who probably the both of them are the biggest influences on me. Tom Marioni actually is a San Francisco-based artist, a process-based artist who also I find his work really compelling. I found out about him during grad school, and he really influenced me a lot. But I think probably Turrell and Irwin are the two, big name artists that have influenced me. There's a great book called "Seeing is Forgetting the Thing Which You Saw" by Lawrence Weschler, I think, and it's about Robert Irwin. And I've read that book several times, and it really changed the way I think about being an artist and my approach. I think it also really gave me the permission to just be really thoughtful about perception, about my own experience of perception, and not worrying about constantly making work, but really examining how my eye works and just getting into the sort of physics of perception in a way that has been, I think, makes my ability to make the work a lot more gratifying. Good. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So from your undergrad to now, could you have pictured in undergrad what your work is now?
Absolutely.
Or how's it changed? Yeah. Were you a painter?
Yeah, it's changed dramatically. So I mean, I was a printmaker. I mean, I think I bring a printmakerly quality to everything I do. Okay. Printmaking is very process-based. There's a beautiful conversion that happens, especially like I was big into etching. Traditional etching on copper. You think of it, I guess we think of it as two-dimensional, but I think of it as really, sort of a sculpture in itself, like the copper plate. And then there's this transformation that happens on the press after you've inked the plate, and you pull the print off the plate, and it's sort of transformed from this three-dimensional matrix to this two-dimensional image. So there's that sort of magic moment for me that I really think about in all my work. Whether it's obvious or not, I don't know, but I think other printmakers look at what I'm doing and they sort of can understand that a printmaker made it. I think the biggest change for me was in my mindset. As an undergrad, and actually even in the first year of grad school, I was what I consider being an illustrative artist, meaning I had ideas and I was just sort of like drawing them or making them. It's sort of like a one-to-one. So, I might have had an idea, I can't think of an example, but I don't want to say it was unsophisticated, but it was just very direct. And then I had this sort of moment of epiphany in grad school where I realized that I was being illustrative and that I wanted to be what I call demonstrative, to demonstrate an idea rather than illustrate an idea. And that's a really important distinction for me. So I don't want, and maybe the truck drawings are kind of a perfect example of that, where it's not obvious that at first blush that this is a truck that's making this drawing, right? If I was being illustrative with this work, maybe I'd make it like the profile of a truck, so it would be very obvious that this is how it's happening, or suggested even more. So demonstrating the idea is to cut the shape of the bed as the print, and have the experience happen within that shape. If that distinction makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. So no, I mean, I don't think in an undergrad, you have to make your way there, right? Undergrads, I recently was at Carleton judging the sophomores or junior, I guess it was the juniors before they start their senior thesis. So I had to crit with each of them, and I was amazed by sort of how sophisticated they were in terms of conceptual art, whereas I feel like I was just way behind where they're at now. Mm-hmm. And so it was impressive to see how much this sort of young, whatever, quote unquote, younger generation is doing. But I feel like I mean, I guess with the information, the museums are much more accessible now, or there's more of them. I think things are on the internet that just didn't exist for me. And so anyway, I think that epiphany might have come sooner, but it happens when it happens, right?
And I would have to agree, because if you graduated undergrad in 92, I graduated by 91, so I'm not too far age-wise, and my students, some of them blow me away.
Oh yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And well, just different styles.
Right. And that I mean, I feel like they've internalized so much of like popular culture in a way that just wasn't, I don't know if we were able to do. I don't know, I'm 47, mm-hmm. and it's amazing to see what, kids, all around kids, I guess they're not really kids, but it's really impressive. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, you were telling me earlier about the process of how you got to Omaha, mm-hmm. and tell me about how the student found your work and invited you. Sure. Kind of the process of how you got here.
So I just checked my email one day, and there's a message from a young woman named Amanda DeFazio. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. Asking if I'd be interested in a solo show at the Metropolitan Community College, and I thought, is this? At first I thought, I was like, is this spam? You get these weird emails every once in a while. So I looked at the Metropolitan Community College and was like, sure enough, that's a legit place. And so I wrote her back and said, sure, I'd be very interested, but I'm kind of curious about how you found me. And she explained that she found me through the Kala Art Institute website, and so thank you, Kala. And then she and I became, we just started an exchange online, over email. So she had to present my work to a committee for review. And I guess that committee was at least Jewel Hossman, who's the gallery director. I'm not sure if other people were in the committee or not. So Amanda did apparently a very, very thorough presentation of my work. And it was a really lovely exchange with her over the course of weeks, asking for images, asking for clarification about my ideas. So we put together essentially kind of a portfolio of my work for her to present to the committee. And so that process was really great, really gratifying to have someone asking such great questions and really interested in my work. And then a couple weeks later, I got another email saying, you've got a show. So I was, of course, very happy. And I said, the only condition I have is really that if there's a stipend, because I can't really afford to ship my work or even come here. But she said, yes, there's a stipend. And then Jewel actually managed to get me a little bit more, because I had spent most of the stipend on my ticket to come out here. Which I was really excited to be able to do. I mean, in part just because, the installation work itself is very hard to direct somebody else to create this work. We made a lot of decisions just kind of on the fly. But also just, it's nice to see your work, and then also to have the opportunity to interact with students was really gratifying to me. So I've met with one class so far, and then today, over the next couple of days, I'm going to be meeting with other classes, doing a lecture on Wednesday right before the opening, and then we have the opening. So
good. Tell me about your future. Where would you like to go with your art in the future?
It's a really good question. I mean, it's tough. I was doing pretty well, showing a fair amount in the Bay Area when I was living there. Moving to Hawaii definitely limits the options for showing. There's less contemporary art in Hawaii in general. Being in the Artist of Hawaii biennial right off the bat is sort of like, is great, but that's sort of like considered by many artists to be the sort of the top goal. So for showing at that level. Unfortunately, I don't really, my work isn't that sellable, or at least people don't want to buy it. So I've sold a few of the truck drawings, but the kinetic work doesn't really seem to sell. People like to show it, which is great. I love the opportunities to show, but it's hard to support without any sales. So in terms of the future, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in getting deeper into the light sculptures, the water and light, and that seems like there's some opportunities there to show that work. That's something that might appeal to a Hawaiian audience. And then, I'm trying to navigate the reality of living on an island in the middle of the Pacific, in terms of my ability to show and what opportunities I'm going to pursue. So there are some galleries there's a gallery in Hawaii. I met the gallerist during my show in Honolulu, and he expressed some interest, so I need to follow up with him, and we'll see kind of where it goes from there. So
is there a vibrant community doing art there?
There is. I mean, there is. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of artists in Hawaii and a lot of artists in Kona, but they tend to do, it's less conceptual, less process-based. It's sort of more representational, probably, is a way to say it. So I'm not sure that there's how about this? There's not a lot of galleries that show the kind of work that I make.
Okay.
So now that doesn't mean that I can't make my own opportunities. So I've done. I ran a gallery in San Francisco, like a nonprofit space for a number of years, and so I'm familiar with all that. I'm not sure that I want that challenge. I guess maybe headache is another word, okay. So I'm not sure. I'm a little unsure about what the future brings for me. I was very glad to have this show. It's wonderful to see all this work up and interact with it again for the first time in a while, and to make some new pieces. So that's been really gratifying. So if anything, this show has really sort of kind of refueled my ambition, and I got to see where it takes me.
Could you tell me your website so people are
for sure.
in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's www.houlding.com. Just my last name, Houlding.com.
Okay.
You can also get to Jesse Houlding, but Houlding's easier.
Good. And I went to the page earlier, and it's really interesting to see the process and how things go.
Right. I have some videos of the processes, like the truck drawings especially, and I'll post this new work when I get back. And keep it up to date.
Good.
So.
Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy your time in Omaha.
Great, thank you. Okay.